I created a travel software that boosted our Bankrupt company to $400 million in profit in a year. But suddenly, on my brother's birthday, my mom gifted him the entire business. When I confronted her, she laughed at me and handed me $100, saying, "This is your actual value." I quietly left, but the next morning, when they arrived at work. I'm Adam Mitchell, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes family can be your worst enemy, especially in business. For 10 years, I poured my heart and soul into our small family-run tech company, transforming it from a struggling startup into a $50 million enterprise. But success has a way of exposing the ugliest sides of people, even the ones who are supposed to stand by you. I remember when it all began, back when our family business was just a tiny computer repair shop in a strip mall, barely making enough to get by. My mom had started it 20 years ago, and despite its struggles, it was her pride and joy. My brother, Lucas, was always the golden child. Straight A's, elite business school, mom's favorite. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one, the one who stayed behind to help her while pursuing a computer science degree at a local college. "Adam, you're wasting your potential here," Lucas would say during his visits home from school. "You should aim higher." But I saw something in that little shop that no one else did: potential. While Lucas was off studying theoretical business models, I was learning how the real world worked. I was coding, fixing systems, spotting gaps in the market that no one else was paying attention to. During my final year of college, I developed our first proprietary software, a simple but effective inventory management tool for small businesses. It wasn't groundbreaking, but it was affordable, user-friendly, and met a real need. At first, Mom was skeptical. But when local businesses started buying licenses, her tune changed. "Maybe you're onto something here, kiddo," she said. And for the first time, I saw a flicker of pride in her eyes. That moment meant everything to me. If only I had known how temporary it would be. Under my leadership, the business began to grow. I worked 14-hour days, 7 days a week, pouring everything I had into our success. While Lucas was climbing the corporate ladder at a top consulting firm in New York, I was building something real. Our tiny repair shop evolved into a full-fledged software development company, expanding from local clients to national corporations. Dad watched me with quiet concern. "Don't work yourself into the ground, Adam," he'd say, bringing me dinner at the office. "You need a life outside of this." But I couldn't stop. Maybe part of me was still chasing validation. Maybe I just wanted to prove that I could make something of my own. 5 years into our transformation, we hit our first $1 million in annual revenue. That's when Lucas suddenly took an interest in the family business again. He quit his high-profile job and moved back home. At a family dinner, he made his grand announcement. "I think it's time I took my rightful place in the company," he said, flashing his trademark confidence. "With my business expertise, we could really take things to the next level." Mom practically lit up. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. We could use your professional touch around here." I sat there, my fork suspended midair, trying to process what was happening. The company I had built from nothing was now being handed to Lucas like some kind of inheritance. I swallowed my objections and played along. Lucas was appointed as co-CEO despite having zero experience in our industry. Mom insisted it was good for our company's image to have someone with his credentials at the helm. So while I continued handling product development and operations, he took over marketing and investor relations. For the next 5 years, our business flourished, but so did the tension. I kept developing new software, building relationships, and improving our services. Meanwhile, Lucas crafted an image for himself as the face of the company. He gave interviews about being a man in tech, accepted awards for entrepreneurship, and took credit for innovations he had nothing to do with. Our revenue skyrocketed to $50 million, but so did the power struggle. Lucas began excluding me from key meetings, making decisions without consulting me, slowly, methodically, pushing me to the sidelines of my own creation. Then came Mom's 60th birthday party, the night that changed everything. The party, of course, was Lucas's idea. He had rented out the grand ballroom at the city's most expensive hotel and invited all our business associates. It wasn't really a birthday party. It was a networking event disguised as one. But that was Lucas's style. Everything had to serve a purpose. I arrived early to help with preparations, wearing a simple black suit. The moment Lucas spotted me, he gave me the disapproving look I had grown used to over the years. "Couldn't you have made more of an effort?" he hissed. "These are important people, Adam." I ignored him and focused on greeting guests. The room quickly filled with business executives, investors, and family friends. Lucas worked the room like a politician, shaking hands and flashing his perfectly rehearsed smile. I, as usual, stayed in the background, making sure everything ran smoothly. Dinner was served, and just as I was starting to relax, Lucas clinked his glass for attention. I expected a typical speech, a tribute to Mom, maybe some nostalgic childhood memories. Instead, he dropped a bomb that shattered everything. As we celebrate Mom's 60th birthday, he began, his voice confident and commanding, "I think it's time to announce some changes at Mitchell Tech." My stomach twisted. "Changes?" "The board has agreed that the company needs unified leadership to move forward," he continued, his words slicing through the room like a blade. Board meetings? What board meetings? For too long, we've been held back by outdated thinking and resistance to change, Lucas went on, his eyes locking onto mine. That's why, effective immediately, I will be taking over as sole CEO. It's time for certain elements that no longer serve our growth to step aside. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I sat there frozen, as Lucas carried out his corporate execution in front of our entire network. Some people, he added, his voice dripping with false sympathy, are better suited for technical roles rather than leadership. He was talking about me. Humiliating me. My brother, Adam, has done an adequate job maintaining our legacy systems. But in today's fast-moving industry, we need vision. We need excellence. And frankly, Adam, you're just not cut out for this level of business. I turned to Mom. Say something. Stand up for me. But she just nodded along, a proud smile on her face. Dad, on the other hand, kept his eyes down, his hands trembling slightly on the table. Lucas wasn't done. The truth is, he said, his voice rising for dramatic effect, Adam, you are worthless in today's business world. Your outdated ideas and lack of formal business education have become the liability. It's time for you to step aside gracefully. The silence in the room was suffocating. Hundreds of eyes were on me, waiting for my response. I could feel the pity, the judgment, the unspoken agreement with Lucas's words. Everything I had built, every late night, every sacrifice. It was all being stripped away in front of everyone. Slowly, I stood. My chair scraped against the floor, the sound slicing through the hush like a gunshot. Everyone expected a scene. Maybe tears. A screaming match. Instead, I simply picked up my wallet, walked over to Mom's table, and placed a small wrapped package in front of her. Happy birthday, Mom, I said quietly. Then I turned and walked out, head held high, leaving behind the whispers, the stares, and the brother who thought he had won. That night, I sat in my home office surrounded by awards and patents that bore my name. Lucas believed he had taken everything from me, but he had forgotten one crucial detail, something that would turn his moment of triumph into the biggest mistake of his life. As I powered up my laptop and began typing, a small smile played on my lips. Tomorrow would be interesting. After all, there's more than one way to run a successful business. And in 10 years, I had learned far more than Lucas had in all his fancy business classes. The next morning, the sun rose bright and clear. And with it, everything was about to change. I arrived at the office early, before anyone else, and waited. At precisely 9 a.m., Lucas strode through the front doors with Mom beside him, both wearing triumphant smiles, smiles that were about to be wiped off their faces. Adam. Lucas's voice held a mix of surprise and annoyance. What are you doing here? I thought after last night, you'd have the dignity to stay home. I smiled, remembering the email I had sent at 3 a.m. to every major client, partner, and employee of Mitchell Tech. Just wrapping up some loose ends, brother dear. But since you're here, we should probably talk about the company's future. There's nothing to discuss, Mom interjected, her voice firm. Lucas is in charge now. The board has already approved it. Ah, yes, the board, I said, pulling out my tablet. Let's talk about that. I tapped the screen, and the conference room's main monitor lit up with a document. You see, while Lucas was busy planning parties and giving interviews, I was actually building this company. And there are a few things you both seem to have forgotten. I pulled up another document, zooming in for emphasis. First, let me remind you that I own 51% of Mitchell Tech shares. When we incorporated 10 years ago, Mom gave Lucas and me equal shares, 25% each, while keeping 50% for herself. But 3 years ago, when we needed capital for expansion, Mom sold me 6% of her shares. Remember that day, Mom? You were too busy attending Lucas's award ceremony to handle the negotiations yourself, so you signed the papers without reading them carefully. The color drained from both their faces. Lucas's perfectly manicured hands gripped the conference table. That's impossible, he whispered. Mom would never. But she did, I interrupted, pulling up another document. And that's not all. I clicked again, and another screen filled with legal filings. The core software that generates 80% of our revenue, it's not owned by Mitchell Tech. It's owned by my separate company, Innovate Solutions LLC. Mitchell Tech only has a licensing agreement, which expires in, I checked my watch, about 10 minutes ago. Mom collapsed into a chair, realization dawning on her face. The renewal papers, she murmured. The ones you asked me to sign last week, the ones I didn't read because you were too busy helping Lucas plan the party? I finished for her. Yes, those papers. I decided not to submit them. Lucas's face twisted in rage. You underhanded little. Careful, brother. I cut him off smoothly. You might want to hear the rest before you finish that sentence. I clicked again, and a flood of emails appeared on the screen. While you were busy announcing my graceful exit last night, I was sending emails to our clients. You see, most of our major clients have personal loyalty clauses in their contracts they signed with Mitchell Tech because of me, my expertise, my track record. Last night, I informed them of the leadership changes and my departure. I zoomed in, showing dozens of responses from our biggest accounts. Would you like to know how many have already triggered their contract termination clauses? I tilted my head. Or how many of our top developers, who, by the way, are actually employed by Innovate Solutions, not Mitchell Tech, have already accepted positions at my new venture? Silence. Through the glass walls, we could see employees gathering, whispers spreading as they checked their emails. Lucas frantically pulled out his phone, his perfect composure cracking as he scrolled. You can't do this, he stammered. You mean I can't take back what's mine? I said calmly. You thought you could just take over because you have an MBA and mom's approval? You thought you could humiliate me in front of everyone and get away with it? I stood, smoothing my suit. So here are your options. I let the weight of my words settle before continuing. Option 1. I walk away. With my shares, my software, my clients, and my employees. Mitchell Tech becomes an empty shell, and you can explain to all those important people you invited last night why the company's value just dropped to zero overnight. Mom's face aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. And option 2, she asked weakly. Option 2, you both resign. I took a deep breath and met their stunned expressions with a calm, unwavering gaze. I take full control of Mitchell Tech, I continued. You both keep your shares as silent partners, receiving dividends, but having no say in operations. Lucas gets a nice severance package and glowing references for his next job somewhere far away from here. Lucas's face turned an interesting shade of red. You planned this all along, didn't you? You were just waiting for the right moment to stab us in the back. I let out a short laugh, devoid of humor. No, Lucas. I spent 10 years trying to be a good son, a good brother, and the entire time, you both took me for granted. I built this company from nothing while you collected accolades for my work. I only planned this. I checked my watch again about 12 hours ago. After you called me worthless in front of everyone we know, my phone buzzed. Another client termination notice. Time's running out. What's it going to be? The next hour was a blur of paperwork and lawyers. By noon, I sat alone in what was now my office, looking out over the city. The company I had built was now truly mine, but the victory felt hollow. Family relationships lay in ruins around me, trust shattered like dropped crystal. That evening, Dad came to see me. His eyes were red from crying. Did it have to end this way? He asked softly. I met his gaze. My voice gentle but firm. They gave me no choice. They would have taken everything I built and discarded me without a second thought. He nodded slowly, understanding but sad. What happens now? I turned my laptop toward him, showing him the plans I had already drawn up. Expansions, new product lines, innovations I had been holding back, nows. I exhaled, feeling lighter than I had in years. Now I build something even bigger. But this time, I do it without carrying people who see me as worthless. 1 year later, under my sole leadership, Mitchell Tech tripled in value. Lucas found a job with a startup in Silicon Valley, humbled, but hopefully wiser. Mom retired, finally understanding that her golden child had nearly destroyed her legacy. We see each other at holidays, maintaining a polite distance, masking wounds that may never fully heal. Sometimes, late at night, I look at old family photos and feel a twinge of sadness for what we lost. But then, I remember that night at the birthday party. The look of disdain on Lucas's face. The way Mom nodded along with his cruel words. And I remind myself, in business and in family, respect is earned, not given. They learned that lesson too late. My story spread through business circles, a cautionary tale about underestimating the wrong person. At industry events, I often catch whispers. That's Adam Mitchell, the one who they never finish the sentence. They don't have to. My success speaks for itself. Last week, I received an invitation to speak at Lucas's business school's graduation ceremony. The topic? Hidden strengths, the power of underestimated leaders. I accepted the invitation with a small smile, already planning my speech. After all, I have quite a story to tell. The company continues to thrive under my leadership. But more importantly, I found peace with my decisions. Sometimes, the strongest message you can send is simply proving people wrong. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't about destroying others. It's about rising so high that they can't help but see their own mistakes. As I sit here in my office, overlooking the city, I remember something my father once told me. Success is the best revenge, but wisdom is knowing when to stop seeking revenge and start seeking growth. He was right. I've moved past revenge. These days, I focus on building something meaningful, something that will outlast the petty jealousies and family drama. I still keep that wrapped birthday present I never gave Mom. A photo album of the company's journey, from that tiny repair shop to what it is today. Maybe someday, when the wounds have healed enough, I'll finally give it to her. Until then, it sits on my shelf, a quiet reminder that our greatest strengths often come from the very things others underestimate about us. 5 years later, the Mitchell Tech logo gleamed from atop our new headquarters, a 40-story glass tower downtown that had become one of the city's architectural landmarks. From my corner office on the top floor, I could see the original strip mall where it all began, now dwarfed by development but preserved as our innovation lab, a reminder of humble beginnings. "Mr. Mitchell, your 2 o'clock is here," my assistant's voice came through the intercom. I straightened my tie and closed the quarterly report on my tablet. "Send her in, please." The door opened, and a familiar figure walked in. Mom looked older, her hair now fully silver, her posture slightly stooped. The last 5 years hadn't been kind to her, though the generous dividends from her remaining Mitchell Tech shares ensured she lived comfortably. "Adam," she said simply, her voice carrying none of the authority it once had. "Mom. Please, sit." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" She shook her head. "I'm fine." Her eyes darted around the office, taking in the awards lining the walls, the view, the evident success. "You've done well." I nodded, waiting. Mom never made social calls. There was always a purpose, an angle. "I heard about the Nexus acquisition," she finally said. $7 billion. Impressive. "Thank you." I kept my voice neutral, professional. Our relationship had stabilized into something cordial but distant. The wounds had scarred over, but they remained. She fidgeted with her purse strap. "I also heard Lucas is back in town." There it was. The real reason for her visit. "Yes, I know." I leaned back in my chair. "He reached out to me last week." "He did?" Surprise flickered across her face. "He didn't mention that." "I imagine there are many things Lucas doesn't tell you these days." The Silicon Valley startup Lucas had joined after leaving Mitchell Tech had failed spectacularly within 2 years. A series of increasingly desperate career moves followed, each less successful than the last. His perfect resume had become scattered with failures and short tenures. "He's changed, Adam," Mom said softly. "Life has humbled him. He's not the same person who—" She trailed off, unwilling or unable to reference that night. "Who publicly humiliated me and tried to steal my company." I finished for her. "It's okay. We can say it out loud now." Mom winced but nodded. "Yes. That person. He's different now." I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation, the old patterns we'd fallen into for years. But all I saw was weariness and genuine concern. "What exactly are you asking me, Mom?" She took a deep breath. "He needs a job. A real one, with stability. He's been freelancing, but it's not enough, especially with the baby coming." That was news. "Lucas is going to be a father?" "In 4 months. His wife Emma is a kindergarten teacher. They're struggling." I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city that had watched our family drama unfold. 5 years ago, this request would have filled me with vindication, maybe even pleasure, the golden child brought low, forced to beg for help from the sibling he'd dismissed. But that feeling never came. "What skills does he bring to the table now?" I asked, keeping my back to her. "Mitchell Tech only hires the best." "He's still brilliant with marketing and client relations," Mom said quickly. "And I think failure has taught him what success never could." I turned back to face her. "Does he know you're here?" She shook her head. "He'd be mortified. His pride is about the only thing he has left, and even that's taken a beating." The irony wasn't lost on me. 5 years ago, Lucas had stood before a room full of people and declared me worthless. Now, his future potentially rested in my hands. "I'll think about it," I said finally. "But I make no promises." Relief washed over her face. "Thank you, Adam. That's all I ask." After she left, I pulled up Lucas's LinkedIn profile. His once impressive resume now showed a clear downward trajectory. His last post was a strained attempt at positivity about embracing the freelance lifestyle that rang hollow. I closed the browser and called my assistant. "Jennifer, get me everything you can find on Lucas Mitchell's recent work history. And schedule a dinner for tomorrow night at Emilio's. Send an invitation to this email address." The next evening, I arrived at the restaurant early, selecting a private table in the back. I'd chosen Emilio's deliberately, upscale enough to be respectful, but not so exclusive that Lucas would feel out of place if his financial situation was as dire as Mom suggested. He arrived precisely on time, still handsome, still carrying himself with confidence, but there were new lines around his eyes, a slight fraying at the cuffs of his shirt. Designer, but from several seasons ago. "Adam," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for the invitation." I shook it firmly. "Lucas. Please, sit." The waiter poured wine, and we studied our menus in awkward silence. 5 years of estrangement hung between us like a physical presence. "Congratulations on the Nexus deal," he said finally. The market response was impressive. "Thank you," I replied. "I heard congratulations are in order for you as well. Mom mentioned you're expecting." A genuine smile crossed his face for the first time. "Yes. A little girl. Due in July. How's Emma handling the pregnancy?" Surprise flickered in his eyes. "You know about Emma?" "I make it my business to know things, Lucas. Some habits don't change." He laughed softly, a sound I hadn't heard in years. "Fair enough. She's doing well, though the morning sickness has been rough." He paused. I didn't think you'd want to know about my life. We're still family, I said simply. Even after everything. The waiter returned, and we ordered. With the formalities out of the way, I decided to get to the point. So, freelance marketing consultant. How's that working out? His smile faltered slightly. It has its ups and downs. Flexibility is nice. And the downs? He sighed, setting down his wine glass. Inconsistent income. No benefits. Constantly hustling for the next gig. He met my eyes directly. But I'm not here to complain about my circumstances. I made my bed. His candor surprised me. The old Lucas would have spun everything into a success story. Mom came to see me yesterday, I said. He closed his eyes briefly. I told her not to do that. She loves you. She's worried. I don't deserve her concern. Or yours. He leaned forward. Look, I know why you invited me here. You want to see if I've truly learned my lesson. If karma has punished me enough for your satisfaction. That's not. It's okay, he interrupted. I would feel the same way. And for what it's worth, yes. Life has thoroughly kicked my ass since I left Mitchell Tech. Every bit of arrogance, every shortcut, every time I took credit for someone else's work, it all caught up with me. I studied him. And what did you learn? He thought for a moment. That success isn't about credentials or connections or saying the right thing to the right people. It's about creating actual value. He looked around the restaurant. That you can't build something lasting on appearances alone. Our food arrived, and we ate in silence for a few minutes. I have a position opening up, I said finally. Head of our new client retention division. His fork paused midway to his mouth. Adam, you don't have to. This isn't charity, Lucas. The role needs filling, and despite everything, you do have skills that could benefit the company. I cut a piece of steak. But let me be clear. You'd report to Vanessa Chen. You'd start on a 6-month probation. And your compensation would be based purely on performance metrics. He set down his fork. Why would you do this? After what I did? It was a fair question. One I'd asked myself repeatedly since Mom's visit. Because holding on to anger takes energy I'd rather invest elsewhere, I said. Because you're about to be a father, and that child deserves a stable home. And because maybe, just maybe, you really have changed. And if I haven't? I smiled. Then you'll fail spectacularly, and I'll have the pleasure of firing you myself. He laughed, a genuine laugh this time. Always the strategist. Always. After dinner, as we waited for the valet to bring our cars, Lucas turned to me. I never properly apologized for that night. For what I said. For what I tried to do. He extended his hand. I was wrong. About everything. You were never worthless. You were always the backbone of Mitchell Tech. I was too blind with jealousy to see it. I took his hand. Apology accepted. His car arrived first, a modest sedan, a far cry from the luxury vehicles he once favored. Before getting in, he paused. I won't let you down, Adam. Not this time. I know, I said, and was surprised to realize I meant it.